preliminary matter, this is Kevin Calcutt, the chair of the Norfolk Select Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated in the agenda that are not in the room with me are present and can hear me. Judith Lazardi?
Here.
Thank you so much. So this open meeting of the Norfolk Select Board is being conducted kind of remotely, consistent with the Governor Baker's order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the Governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. With that, would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Well, it was an exciting election day, Blythe. What do we have on our agenda tonight?
A few things. The two action items are to consider a reorganization of the select board and then consider liaison assignments to other town committees. The discussion items include discussing board and committee vacancies, disbursement of federal ARPA funds to Norfolk County communities, website posting of board correspondence, if there's any liaison updates to share, and town administrator updates. And then we have 3 warrants and several sets of minutes to approve.
Very good. Thank you, Blythe. Why don't we go into our first agenda item, which is our COVID-19 updates.
So good news tonight. Very pleased that Norfolk has again reached the green category with our positivity rate over the preceding 14 days dropping by about 3 points to 9.1%, just 7 new cases, so really happy about that. And with that, I'm going to be going over the protocols with staff tomorrow, but we're planning to reopen Town Hall, hopefully Thursday, if not Monday. It's time. Things are good, and we have all the measures in place. Just want to go over that with everyone and make sure everyone's prepared and ready to go. And then we are going to be talking about the federal funds a little bit later, but just we haven't heard yet when the advice is supposed to come out. I think early next week from the feds about how the monies can be spent and the details about that. So we're looking forward to that so we can track what we can start to think about doing once the dollars hit the town's bank account. And you know the governor's changed some of the gathering orders, started with mask mandates outdoors last Friday, other limits changing towards the end of the month, and then in August depending on how things are going. So that's all hopefully good news, and the numbers are continuing to trend in the right direction. And I'm sure everyone's heard that he's closing 4 of the mass vac sites, including Gillette, I think at the end of June, and transitioning to other ways to get vaccines to people. So continue to move that in the right direction. So those are my updates.
Very good, Blythe. And do we happen to have a line as to the percentage of Norfolk residents that are vaccinated? Or is that
yes, in the report that comes out every Thursday, just under 55% of Norfolk residents, about 66,250, I think, had gotten a first shot. We're slightly behind the average, but overall, the state and New England is doing very well in that regard.
How accurate is are the numbers, right? Because that the town has in terms of people receiving a vaccination.
I'm sorry?
How accurate, are the numbers?
It's hard to say. It's what's reported by the state, I assume.
But I guess that's my question, right? Because I don't know, is it that when you receive your vaccine, it's reported to the state and then they're disseminating it, or is the town receiving it from some other?
No, we're receiving it on the state's portal where they update that information.
So every day when they, like Gillette will like pull
Right.
up its numbers and send numbers and names, or just number in town? Like how much information? I don't know why people wouldn't want people to know, but I guess I know HIPAA law, right? Like, and I know at my firm they wanted to know who was vaccinated, and I've had both. And they were like, but some people don't want people to know, so we're doing all this stuff. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know why anyone wouldn't want to know, but I guess it's their business. So I was just curious how, what information the folks at Gillette would be giving to the state, and then what, from there, what information is being disseminated to the various towns? Is it just the number and whether it was first and second and what town, or is it actually also the names, so that when fire, et cetera, personnel go to a house, they know?
I'm assuming that there is more information given to the state.
Yeah. Just curious.
Besides that, and I mean, I know that when I got my second shot, I got an email back saying, here's how you can access your electronic record about this, you know, if you need it in the future.
Right.
So I think more granular data is probably going there, but what they put up on the portal when they update it every Thursday is just how many in each town.
Got it.
Break it down by male, by female, but not any further than that. So,
And may I ask a question about the staff at Town Hall?
Sure.
Are they mostly vaccinated?
we haven't asked people, but I think the general sense is most are. I think there probably are a couple that haven't, but overall, I think we were just waiting to see if this surge was going to continue or was dropped off, and here it is dropped, so.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
That's great news. Thank you, Blythe. I'll leave it open for anybody in attendance who has any questions related to our COVID-19 updates. Please use the raise hand function at this time. Seeing none, so we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is our public comment period. This is the point where anybody in attendance can share the mic for about 3 minutes or so, just to ask anything of the town administrator or select board that pertains to the scope of those two bodies. If you would like to share during public comment this evening, please use the raise hand function at this time. I am not seeing any hands for public comment tonight, so we'll be moving on to our first action item, which is to please discuss the reorganization of the select board. As I had said earlier, today was election day. It squeaked out a nail biter.
My glasses keep getting foggy.
No contested races, but I am happy to report that everybody who did run for position was elected to those positions, so we congratulate everybody who's on the ballot. That does also mean that I will be serving on the select board for another 3 years. 2 years ago, when we had a little bit of an off-cycle kind of occurrence where we had one board member who resigned, we had 2 new board members come on, we agreed that we would, instead of going with the normal cycle, have one member serve in the chair position for 2 years, and then we would get back onto the normal cycle once we got into this year. So as such, I would love to move that we appoint Cece Van Tine as the chair of the select board.
Second.
It's a second. Any discussion? Nope, no discussion? So we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None. It is unanimous. Congratulations, Cece.
Yay, I'd
Here's
like,
the ceremonial gavel slide. Ha!
oh, I think I already have the book, though. Is this Town Meeting Times or Rules of, Robert's Rules of Order? Cannon's Concise Guide to Rules of Order. It's different. And Roberts and I have the town meeting, I don't think I'm, like, you could keep that book. But, so I gotta nominate a vice chair,
You
right?
do.
I would like to nominate Anita Mecklenburg as vice chair of the Board of Selectmen.
I will second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous, as I used to say when I was moderator. So that means we now need to nominate, there's like one other position, right?
Right?
What is that position? It's the clerk.
Director of Fun.
It's the director of fun. I didn't know that was what it was. So,
I nominate Kevin Calcutt to be the clerk of the Norfolk Select Board.
seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, it's reorged. whoo,
I have to say, this has been the fastest year.
it really has.
The
hasn't it?
fastest year.
So
Like, I
fast.
feel like I'm still brand new.
And
And
I think-
here, it's a full year later.
Well, it's not actually, because you started in
Yeah, your
end
election
of
was a little
June.
bit-
So it's not
It's
quite
not
a year.
even.
These next 6 weeks are gonna really change
They're gonna
everything.
screech to a halt. They're just gonna come to a screeching halt. Well, and it's funny because I went back to look through the minutes of how people had transitioned in the past, and you know, every single time it's just like this. Although at the school or wherever, which somewhat had a feel of being sworn in on Air Force One, right? Like people are like, it's like at the school and they're having these meetings. And so I was just sort of looking around the beginning of May to sort of read through how people had presented it in the agenda, et cetera. And then last year I'm looking at May and I'm like, it's not May. And I'm like, that's right. And it was sort of, you know, in June for the town meeting and in June, you know, the election and everything. So, but it did fly by, considering what a craptacular year it really was for everybody. It also sped right by. So I suppose there's that as well.
Yes.
So,
Good food.
from a housekeeping standpoint, at some point, Kevin, you're gonna have to teach me, not today, but at some point, I'm gonna ask you to show me how to do all this stuff. 'Cause Nita and I were looking at each other, because we're looking at that, and you're like, anyone in attendance that I know, we're both like, there's only 2 people in attendance, Kevin. And I know that you know that there's more, but I'm like, I don't know what he's seeing, and I'm looking over at Nita, and we're both looking back, we're looking at you. So I'm gonna need like a tutorial on the magic that is what's going on
Zoom.
there. But for today, I'm gonna let you continue to be the king, not only captain of fun, but also the king of the high tech.
So many titles, I love
So,
it.
yeah, I have a lot of orders in for different placards for you. So just don't fill out any applications using them, and we'll be good.
Gotcha.
So I guess is it midstream we take over? All right.
It's
well,
up to you guys.
looky-loo. Do you want to just finish out the night, or
Whatever is to your liking. I'm happy to do that if you'd like.
finish out the night?
Gotcha.
Finish strong, Kevin. Bring it on home.
All right. The next agenda item this evening is to please consider liaison assignments to the other town committees. So typically, these would cycle through. I think in each year that we've been on the board together, we've cycled through each year and kind of changed hands a little bit. But it really is up to us how you want to handle it, considering that we now have the same 3 moving on. I don't know if there's a level of comfort that's been established between the liaison assignments or not, or if anybody has a strong feeling about wanting to switch them up. So really kind of just leave it open to what everybody's thinking.
Yeah. 2 suggestions.
Sure.
On the list, I might suggest we change Buckley Man project to maybe PIP projects, so it's a little more general to whatever projects are going on. It's just a thought. And then Public Safety Building Committee could be Fire Station Building Committee.
Right, that had been one of the things that when I was looking at
Right.
the list, that it has changed,
Yep.
so, just sort of change, but that can be a friendly amendment, right?
Sure.
Doesn't need to be anything. So I was thinking, to your point, Kevin, again, I think that the last year was somewhat, hopefully, not typical of what's going to be going forward. Certainly wasn't typical of what was in the rearview mirror. I mean, unless, I don't have any problem trading out with somebody for something that they would be interested in. But unless there were strong feelings, I feel like sort of when we were having this conversation last, like the end of June or whenever, there was this idea that maybe there'd be, silly us, a couple more weeks of Zoom and pandemic mindfulness, and then we'd be able to sort of waft off and actually physically go to meetings and get to know people and so forth. And that hasn't really happened. So I suppose on the one hand, there's no sort of real sort of alignment. Nobody's going to be like, oh gosh, so sad to see CC go. But on the other hand, we haven't really gotten to do it yet either.
Right.
So my thinking was, and I'm certainly not, I'm just one of 3, but my thinking was, unless somebody had a strong feeling, just sort of maybe leave it, other than, as Blythe said, when I was looking, I had been very excited to do the public building committee initially back 2 years ago, and then it sort of it just took a while for it to get off and then get renamed
Right.
and so forth. So, I don't know. What do you think?
I actually agree with that. I have been
What do you know?
I have been a poor liaison,
Me too.
very poor, and I own that. And it's been that kind of a year where just my personal life and then adding this on is, so I would like the opportunity to do better than I have done. And so
Me too.
I'd like to keep it the same as long as you're comfortable with keeping them the same.
100%.
Yeah, that seems to make sense, other than as Blythe suggested, perhaps renaming so that we're really,
More timely.
right,
Yep.
and
I'm-
accurate, right?
Blythe, were those the only two changes we had to liaison assignments? There wasn't anything else that had come up as an opportunity for us to assign a liaison? That was it?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So in that case, I don't believe any action is required. We just kind of keep going how we're going.
I think you could take a vote to maintain the same assignments as was in 2021, something like that.
I move that we maintain the same liaison assignments as we had in 2021.
Seconded.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, our first discussion item this evening is to please discuss board and committee vacancies, Blythe.
Yes, so in your packet is the appointments list just concludes the committees and boards that this board appoints. And so we wanted to bring this to your attention initially for two reasons. One, to talk about the fact that we still have vacancies on the Zoning Board of Appeals. And also the Conservation Commission has had a resignation, so there's a vacancy there. But I wanted to make sure that you're aware of all of them. So they're, on this list, they're highlighted in yellow. So Conservation, a Council on Aging position, one from the Fire Station Building Committee, but they're meeting next week, and John Kent has expressed interest in being on that committee, who was originally interested. So they're talking with him next week, and that, I think, will resolve itself. In June, the state law changed about housing authorities, and there needs to be one tenant member appointed, and so we'll need to be taking that up. That's a little bit different, just so you're aware that that's coming. And Town Government Study Committee has a majority of vacancies. It's
Yeah,
7
saw that.
members with 4 vacancies. And then, as you know, the Zoning Board of Appeals, because of 2 resignations after your last meeting, we have 2 full-member vacancies and 1 associate member vacancy. And we don't have any current candidates for those. So I think, wanted to start tonight by just discussing the way forward particularly on ZBA and perhaps Conservation, but make sure you were aware of the other ones. Because we're starting our usual process internally where we reach out and find out if people who are up for reappointment want to be reappointed. Do committees have any recommendations? We're gathering all that so you can do the usual appointment process sometime ideally in June.
Thanks, Blythe. When we appointed a new associate member to the ZBA, that's what you're considering as one of those 2 spots right now, right? So in theory, that individual could be moved up to
That's
a full seat?
That is correct.
Okay. Leaving us with 1 full and 2 associate vacant. Okay. Is the Town Government Study Committee still meeting? that you
I
know
think
of?
they did have a meeting recently. I had a conflict, so I didn't go, but, I mean, I can check in with Jonathan and see what's doing.
And then my last note on this one was, I do believe that the B1 Zoning District Working Committee will be disbanded after town meeting.
So Judith asked me about that today, and I said, let's see what happens at town meeting and whether there's a need to go forward or want to go forward. I said, we'll just wait on that.
That's the notes that I had.
Mm-hmm.
From, in my notes, the only things that I had relative to, I know from talking with you that the Concom had the availability, and I remember this from every year, sort of the places where there's vacancies, and it's kind of a fun opportunity to sort of drum up interest. But with respect to the ZBA, in terms of setting a time by which to sort of entertain openings, I understand that there haven't been any, but I've talked with quite a few people who've sort of kicked the tires, like, oh yeah, I might want to, that's interesting, blah, 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 I'd like to know more about it. And so that's why I was sort of thinking that sort of have tonight as sort of a conversation, and then have a, hey, by X time, let's try to get some people to apply, just so it feels less sort of, sure, sometime in the distance and a little more formalized. The other thing that I was thinking, and I know, Kevin, you had talked, and I don't know that anyone other than the usual suspects actually watches us, so I don't know what impact it had, but I know that you were talking about, well, it'd be nice to have an engineering or a business, or rather construction, but I really kind of feel like, having read some of the bylaws now, that planning board, I absolutely agree with you that you want some of those voices, but with ZBA, it feels like if you can read English, you can apply a set of facts to a bylaw. Like, it doesn't need necessarily, I mean, it would be nice, but I don't want to scare someone off who might want to get involved in town. It is, semi-judicial, but most judges aren't necessarily conversant in every single set of facts that come before them. They're just able to apply a set of facts to a set of specific laws. So I did want to maybe talk about, picking the date by which maybe at least, one full, one associate, because again, what's kind of cool about how the ZBA functions is that, unlike other places where you have an associate member, as long as the associate member has been sort of tracking, they can sort of function and vote as a full member until such time as, which I think is kind of cool. I don't know, it seems somewhat like Animal Kingdom-ish, but I digress again. So I just wanted to put that out there that, I know I had sort of been like, hey, like, I'd see people who I've known in the past have been interested in being involved in town, and they hear the words Zoning Board of Appeals, and it sounds very weighty, and certainly there are folks who have been on that or involved with that board in the past who would like you to think that, in fact, it is weighty, and it's an important role, it's an important job, but it's not brain surgery. And so people like me who can't do brain surgery, it might be a nice opportunity for them to get involved in the town. And then the second piece was just using the Mr. Kaliza's opening, that his spot would have ended at the end of June of this year. So my question was, do we time, I know it probably doesn't matter for the second gentleman who had to leave, but for his, where it was only going to be, he was up in like a month anyway, do we time his appointment for after that date, or do we have to on that date or after it, or select it before but not effective until after, so that that appointment can be for the full term rather than for an appointment of a matter of weeks? That was more of a logistical question, because he was up, at the end of June, so we would have been looking for his replacement,
Right.
or, for him to be the president, whatever. I'm not editorializing, I'm just saying that spot would have been open anyway. So timing, I wanted to explore the timing in light of the fact that the loss, as it were, was really of a 6-week, 5-week, and how do we, is there a way to
I think you can.
schedule it so that
you
we're
could-
not having to do it, be like, all right, now come back in 5 weeks?
Well, so we meet on, next two meetings are May 18th and June 1st. So, June 1st might be a good
That'd be
time
great, yeah.
to go, and so there'd be an appointment for, if we had two people who want to be full members that the board wanted to appoint, one could go through 2025 and one could go through 2026.
That makes sense.
But,
That's all, that's what, I just wanted to sort of talk housekeeping in terms of that. That made sense to me.
The other thing I'd like to help people understand is that I've talked with both the building official, who's the zoning enforcement officer, and the planner, and they would plan to offer, training, if you will, some classes, if you will, for anyone who's new, to help them learn how to navigate the bylaw and how to apply in some instances. So people shouldn't feel put off that maybe this is not their area of expertise. You know, our job in part as staff is to help guide them and help them understand it, get them oriented. So that, I think, comes as part of the offering
Which is
here.
great. I actually might tag along and join in on that because I think there's a huge value add to that. And I'll also say, not as much, when I was on there was a committee that I applied for that had to do with prison mitigation. And it wasn't as much on that committee, this was way back like in '07 or something. But when I was moderator and there was something else I was on, that just being somewhat involved, like in one little thing, and I'm sure both of you know this as well, like the amount that you learn about everything involved in the town, like almost like layers, like a parfait, right? Like just from like the water under the ground to the streets on top of like all around the town. There's so much that you can learn. And I didn't even think I knew, I certainly didn't think I cared to learn. Like I was fine, not knowing what I didn't know, but it was really quite cool. So hopefully people take advantage of that, especially with the people sort of adding their skill set.
Yep.
So previously, Blythe, we had put up some postings identifying and advertising that there were these positions open, and with that, I think we were highlighting some of the preferred backgrounds and whatnot. To Cece's point, we maybe want to step that back a little bit and not be so specific in what we're telling people we're looking for, just so that we can maybe work with a larger pool of interested individuals.
What I'd like to do is take all the vacancies here and put them on a list and put out advertisements to say we're looking for all these openings. And, happy to pair you up with staff if you want to learn more about them, or people who are on these committees already to ask questions and decide whether you're interested.
To Cece's point as well, I mean, if somebody who maybe not be as involved sees Zoning Board of Appeals, they may feel that sounds kind of intimidating. Perhaps we could put just a blurb about what the scope of each of those boards and committees is,
Sure.
some of the routine things that they typically address or deal with. Just really high level, right? Not super nitty gritty.
And I think for people logistically, number of meetings, like how often do they meet? I think
Yeah, we did that when the ZBA, we talked about what their regular schedule was and the time commitment.
That'd be good.
Well, and I like that too, because I think that one of the things that struck me it was last year or the year before, there was a move afoot to limit or mandate now it's not our position, right? It's the advisory board, the advisory committee who are appointed by the moderator, but there was an attempt to manage the background of the people who could, or certain of the people. Certainly, by the time it got all the way through, I think it was more like, one member, but initially it should be all members. And on the one hand, the larger hand, if you have a large small hand, the larger hand is that we're looking to people to volunteer. This isn't even a job search. And if we say, you must have this litany of, people are gonna be like, oh, crap, I don't wanna do that. But on the smaller hand, it really kind of sometimes smacks of somewhat paternalistic to say that I don't think, because in this particular instance, some of the people were sort of saying, right, that people who didn't work outside the home, that they were primary caretakers for their children, shouldn't be involved, and which means that they don't have any clue about the amount of financial work and budgeting and so forth that goes on within the home. But it really smacked of, I'm trying to navigate the words.
Yeah.
I'm like doing a lot of tap dancing in how I say this, but it just felt really inequitable in application, perhaps not in spirit, perhaps not what they had originally thought, although actually I'd heard some of them say, you can't have X, Y, Z, and that was a problem. So to sort of take a step back, as you say, sort of go a little more high level, like these are all volunteer positions. No planes are gonna crash into the side of a mountain if your background is in the culinary arts and you want to come in and do something on the planning board. So come on in, type of thing. It's just where.
Sure.
Whew, I'm gonna need some liniment oil.
Claudia, did you have anything else on the appointments or the approach for
No, the only
advertisement?
thing I had that was piggybacked on what you said, I thought that when we had considered David Axberg as an associate member, I know his interest was being a full member, and I think that's a natural move for us to do that, but in general, and then just to kind of what Cece was saying, I think when I came on board, my interest was out of a sense of obligation, but I've ended up finding it to be really fascinating. And so I think that that's a real thing. Like, it really is fascinating and interesting to see how the town as a machine, like, works, and it's been super interesting.
Cece, anything else you wanted to add to the appointments?
No?
Blythe, anything else you need in terms of direction?
Nope.
Questions?
So we want to target kind of the first meeting in June to make appointments?
Yeah, I think that's
All right.
great.
Great. We'll do that.
Thank you, Blythe. Our next discussion item this evening is to please discuss the disbursement of the federal ARPA funds to Norfolk County communities. Blythe, go right ahead.
I'm going to start this little. So, this is a presentation that was put together by several members of the Norfolk County Managers Association. This is a group that was organized by my colleague in Norwood to work together on various topics. And it's actually been super helpful in sharing information and things like that. So this was put together to talk to each one of our communities about the fact that how the federal ARPA funds are going to be distributed and what that means, and whether or not we want to see a different distribution take place. So I'll go through this with some fairly quickly. So as you know, the federal government's passed the stimulus bill, and it's providing money directly to cities, towns, and counties in every state to be used in three key areas: to respond to the COVID pandemic in various ways, to provide government services to the extent that there's been revenue reduction, such as income or property tax, and make investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And the way it's being distributed is on a per capita basis. Cities and towns in Norfolk County will get $194 per person. Some community development block grant communities will get some additional allocations, and there are a few communities, including Randolph, that will get additional funds from the state because they're particularly hard hit in some way, and Randolph is the one that's in mind. So in Massachusetts, there are a number of counties that have have basically become non-functional. They're in name, but they don't actually provide any services. Norfolk is not one of them. They are a functioning county, and they're set to receive $137 million. And in counties where they have abolished the government, all the money, both the town share and the county share, is going directly to the towns. And so that's one of the things we wanted, the key thing that we wanted to point out to you. Most of the rest of the United States does operate on a county system, where counties are providing services that we provide directly. In Massachusetts, the counties generally provide registry, court, and jail services, but in other places in the United States, they're providing schools, libraries, public safety. Almost all the services are at the county level, and that, probably in that sense makes more sense that the money goes directly to them. In Massachusetts here, it's a little different. Question?
What is it that Norfolk County provides to us?
Not exactly an expert in that, but I think it's along the lines of registry, court, jail services. There's a Norfolk Aggie school. They do provide a veteran service agent that is contracted to a couple communities and provides that assistance, but it's pretty minimal. As you'll see, I think it's coming up slide. Their whole budget is $35 million a year, and they're slated to receive $137 million. So $132 million more than their annual budget. They don't own any water, sewer, or broadband. They don't have the administrative capacity for the sorts of things that we do on a daily basis. And they have had a changeover of staff, which probably makes it, difficult for them to manage some of the aspects of the grant funding that would have to be dealt with. So again, here's a picture of the county. I've always found it interesting that Cohasset and Brookline are in the county, but they're not.
That's gerrymandering right there, ladies
go.
and gents. That's what that is.
Thank you for that.
I deal
So-
with the counties all the time, so
Okay,
just because of the probate, to your point, yeah, the
Yep.
probate and family court
yep.
is county driven.
So, the thought of the Norfolk, town administrators and managers is that, the cities and towns in the county, we feel are really better able to administer these funds and make differences for residents because we're that much closer to them, in the terms of the services we provide. And it'd be more effective and efficient than giving it to the county who just doesn't do those sorts of things. It's not in their wheelhouse. And that's not a criticism, it's just what they're set up to do. And so, really the crux of this is do we want to push the county to share the funds with the towns inside it? As you know from the budget presentation we're putting together for town meeting, the town of Norfolk has come through the pandemic, better than some communities have. We're not losing hotel and motel tax revenue, but we have been affected in some areas. But it's more local than just at the county level. There may be situations in some communities where, they're gonna have implications on assessments for properties and revenue losses. And then there's just the whole human aspect to what's been lost and how we are better able to handle the social activities and services that our residents need than the county level is. We may continue to have costs to respond to the pandemic. It's certainly very unclear when it's gonna end. While we're not providing vaccinations right now, we still are providing some other services. We certainly are spending a lot of money in the area of health and response to, contact tracing and follow-up that happens very locally, and not at the county level. As I mentioned earlier, Norfolk County doesn't have any water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure, which is one of the key areas that the funds can be spent on. We certainly do have water, limited sewer, and broadband, I think, is more focused on more rural areas of the state and in the country where people don't have access to that infrastructure that's been so critical for learning and working. But that's an area that we wanted to point out as well. And infrastructure certainly is a key issue for any community on trying to be doing what we should in that area. So I think this is the table that I found the most helpful. If you go right down to Rentham, they're on a population basis, they're the closest to us, of just about 12,000 population. And their number and ours is off by $3,000. So I think ours is slightly lower. It's 1,183,000. But if this Norfolk County transferred all their funds on a per capita basis, Rentham would receive just over $3.5 million, and we would the same. So the difference to Norfolk is the difference between those two bottom numbers. So
Significant, huh?
it is significant. So what the managers are recommending each of the towns discuss is whether or not we should be asking the county commissioners to transfer some or all of the funds that they are due to receive to the towns. And since this presentation was put together, communication has been going on, and I think there is going to be communication about doing that. That's why I put this on the agenda for discussion tonight and not to ask you to act, to see how those communications evolve. But if they don't, at a upcoming meeting, would the board want to consider, sending a resolution, and we put the sample in your packet, or some other action to say, hey, we think you should make a change and share some or all the funds directly with the towns. So that's really what I wanted to bring to your attention, and have a chat about if you wanted to do so.
Has the county identified that they had a different idea about the way that these funds were going to be dispersed, if at all?
They haven't. I mean, I don't think they've discussed it as a board that I know of yet. I know there's been one-on-one conversations with different town administrators in the county, reaching out to commissioners individually, and they have a new manager in the county level to say, hey, we're all a little concerned about this. We think that it's not necessarily equitable that the county keep it all, when we think we could be more impactful if we could have some or all of it come directly to the towns. So wanted to kind of get your feedback on that, your thoughts on it, and, we can continue to see what direction this is going, and then take some action if there isn't going a direction we're comfortable with, or if it does, then we let them just proceed.
I just have one more question. When the monies that were distributed to the state via the rescue plan were given out, how were those determined to be dispersed to the individual municipalities? Was it the same per capita formula, or was it something else?
The first round?
Yeah, from the state.
That was a state decision of how much it was going to share to each community. That was, they got all the funds, and they decided how they thought that was best dispersed from there. This is different in that the federal government decided we're going to disperse it directly, some to states, and then directly to counties and communities. And depending on where you are in the United States, it's mostly going to a county, or it's going all to a community. I mean, in Worcester County, where I had been before, the town I was in is getting $2.5 million because nothing's going to the county, because there is no county for it to go to. So New England is an anomaly to the rest of the country.
Right, I think at the core of my question was, though, with the disbursement of these county funds that's being proposed by the town managers, they're identifying that the methodology they're going to use is just a per capita basis
Yes.
for distribution.
I'm sorry, yes.
I don't believe that's what the state had done when they dispersed their funds to the individual municipalities, right? It wasn't just per capita.
I think they did it per capita, but they decided how much of their overall funds they were going to disperse.
Right, so there was a lump
Yes.
sum, and whatever that sum was, they dispersed that per capita
Yes.
as well. Thank you, that's what I was
Sorry.
looking for. No worries.
It seems pretty straightforward. It doesn't seem complicated in my mind or gray at all.
Right.
It seems like it's pretty straightforward that the money should go to the towns.
Like you're almost like waiting for what's like the trick question.
Right.
When you get the math.
There isn't, it's
First
just.
question on your algebra exam is 3 times 2, and you don't answer it because you're convinced that you're missing something.
Right, because
Right.
if their typical budget is 35 million, it seems insane that they would keep.
Right, well, part of the
137.
strategy here is raising everyone's awareness across the county that, there seems to be a better way to do this. The end goal is to help the communities and the residents in them.
But let's not forget that the county, this is one of those times where I assume nobody watches us, even though it's televised. The county sometimes is
Safe for all time.
earmuffs. There are people involved in all levels of government who, because rightly or wrongly, because it maintains a center of control, if there is a large influx of money coming in, that is an opportunity for them to do things that they've always wanted to do, that they think that countywide, that's just the piece that I throw in to be nice, to employ their friends and family, to wield power by appointment, to do all of the things that people have done since Caesar was getting stabbed. And so I think that there is going to be some fighting. That's fine. I like a good fight just as much as the next person. So, but I think that that's going to be where you're going to see, when you want to talk word salad, it's going to be the memos that are going to come down explaining to you and I and everybody here and everybody with every select board and city council within the 11 boroughs of Norfolk County and all the other counties, I'm confident, on why they need to manage. You know, maybe we can give you 100,000, maybe, but really why we need to keep the. That's, I think. But, you know, game on, right?
Yep.
Like, nothing ventured, nothing gained. If we don't ask, we don't get it. And maybe if we're a squeaky enough wheel and sort of say, listen, to Anita's point, 35 million every year, you're fine with. Is that why you've included the budget draft?
No, Patricia St. Aubin had just been to a committee meeting, and she's always, whenever she's been, she really wants to make sure you all get a copy of what she received. So one has nothing to do with the other.
Because it's interesting, because it shows that, it's April 9th, but I imagine given the amount of work that was done, it looks like it started like at end of December.
Mhm.
There's nothing in here that considers the influx, which is obviously somewhat of an enemy playbook, kind of a, you didn't need it, we do. You ought not to be, you could see, this is the type of thing where somebody with the exact same last name gets appointed to be the person who pays out the money to the tune of like $137,000 a year salary to the towns, that kind of
Yep.
thing. No judgment. Oh, I made a little judgment, but so I think that that's going to be one of the things that we're up against, right? Is the legitimate places where they may need, you know, the money. I'm assuming there are some, I just haven't thought of them. And the desire to maintain control over a significant pot of gold,
Right.
for lack of a better term. And then my other question, apropos of nothing, is so each town is represented by a person. That's why, like, there's the you know.
Yes, so she's our representative, and she's always very diligent. When she's been to a meeting, she comes in and she, please copy this, give it to the board.
When are there? Obviously I could go on and figure out when there are meetings. Is the person appointed from each town? How is that done?
I think she's on.
Oh, is she on this thing?
This is boards. I need to double check.
Is she? That, I guess, is my question. Is she?
One-year
Is
appointments.
it the same?
Yep,
Okay.
it's on. Yes, it's under.
Because obviously, if it's she or if she's up, if it's someone else.
It's a one-year appointment. She's been our representative for, I think, a while now. In my 2 years here, like I said, whenever there's something to report, she is very diligent coming in and making sure we're copying it and giving it to you. And so that just happened to come in at the same time.
Right. No, I'm just thinking that if we're going to need to be sort of game on, drop the gloves, slap shot aggressive, all sort of hockey theme right there. Is she or somebody else, if, her appointment is up, is there a good advocate to be in there and scrappy with us?
Well, I could certainly.
Is that a role that's appropriate, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I
is more
certainly
my
can
general
call her
question.
and tell her that, we discussed it, and the board is of a mind that it should come to.
Yeah, what's she think,
Is she
right.
prepared to carry that message firmly for us?
Yeah, or even if that is something that's within,
Right.
the wheelhouse of the position, I guess is
Yep.
more my.
I would certainly talk to her about that. And then I can, like I said, monitor what the conversations are going. I mean, I know all the managers certainly feel the same, that it should be transferred to the towns. And hopefully those quiet conversations are going to lead towards the outcome that we hope for. But I'll let you know if it doesn't appear to be going that way, so we can take other action.
Sounds great.
Excellent.
For the issue at hand, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, this just seems to make too much sense to not have this be the way. But higher level, I'm sitting here raising my eyebrow about these other counties that have abolished the county level government and looking at the counties that maintained it. It's actually less counties than those who have abolished. And Cece, to your point, I don't know if you knew this, but in 1795, Brookline petitioned the Supreme Judicial Court to change its allegiance back to Suffolk County. The court, however, ignored the petition.
Well, probably someone on the court was related to someone who was only gonna get elected to whatever position he needed Brookline and Norfolk County for. So there you go.
There it
Still
is.
happens today, but, you know, the more things change.
Yes.
I just wanted to throw in
But
a
every
nice
time, yeah,
education.
every time I have a client in Cohasset, and, I was like, all right, we gotta go file in Norfolk County. And they're like, well, what do you mean? All my friends are Hingham and Hull and Duxbury. No, 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 friend. Not for you.
Enjoy your island. All right, if we don't have anything else on that item, you will notice that I am not calling on anybody in attendance this evening, as there is nobody
Nobody
in
is
attendance this
attendance.
evening. So just in case anybody is thinking that we're trying to breeze through this without involvement.
Breeze away, though.
Kindly
Breeze
know.
away.
Yeah. Our next item this evening is to please discuss the website posting of board correspondence. I do not believe that I have seen any correspondence of note come across over the course of the last 2 weeks. Cece, anything from your end?
Nope.
Anita? Very good. Our next item is to please discuss liaison updates. Blythe, do you have anything high level from your perspective? Nope. From my end, I don't believe we have anything new as it pertains to the Southwood Hospital site. I know that right now we're kind of gearing up for town meeting and looking forward to zoning change proposals and all that kind of fun stuff, but I'm sure that we'll be checking in with them more diligently once we get past Saturday.
Right.
The planning board is going to be bringing forward the B1 zoning proposals. We had a good informational meeting last night where people were invited to come and ask their questions before we get to the formal town meeting for those who feel a little uncomfortable about zoning and what's being proposed. I think we had about 5 or 6 people in attendance who asked some pretty good questions over the course of an hour and a half. So looking forward to town meeting and getting this in front of the community and hearing what their questions and debate might look like.
Yep.
I think that's everything I have from my end. Cece, Anita, anything? Nope, okay. Very good. Our next item on the agenda this evening is the town administrator updates.
A few things, starting with town meeting. I don't know if you all saw the email from the moderator this afternoon. What's our thoughts about continuing ahead to have it on Saturday or moving it to sometime in June? He has a conflict next Saturday morning. He's got a town meeting in a different community in the morning, and I understand the advisory committee chair has a conflict on the 15th, which was our rain date. Just thoughts about what to do.
So he doesn't have a conflict on the rain date?
He does in the morning, so I suppose if the weather was decent, I think there's a possibility he could be available at some point in the afternoon, but I'd have to confirm that. That was what was discussed at the moderators meeting, that he had to be in, I think in Uxbridge in the morning, but perhaps he could be available in the afternoon, but it was just a passing conversation, it wasn't a plan.
Because my understanding is that, or was, that we picked days that would have worked for the moderator, right?
Mhm.
Because that's the rule, not the advisory committee, because there's like 11 of them.
Yeah.
I don't know that you need the chair for who's gonna read the pre-printed stuff on the paper, but you do need the moderator, although he can appoint an interim.
Yeah.
I thought we picked the day based on his schedule. Did he then have something jump in the line, which is fine, I'm just curious.
I assume so. When he said on the email today, he said he was pretty much booked on every Saturday. So I think a
Was
lot
he
of
not, I
time,
guess my question was he not booked at the time we told him what the rain date was?
I believe he wasn't. So something must have changed. So the weather forecast could be cool and spot showers and 30% chance, and is that okay? I mean, as I said, several people, I'm happy to show up in my parka and umbrella, but, you know, I want to do what everyone wants to do, so. Interested in your thoughts on whether we move it, and he did also say that if we moved it to June, he'd be more amenable to an inside location, just because it's just that much further out. So that's everything I know.
So with the last inside location, it was very difficult
It
to
was
hear.
awful.
So
It was
we'd have to
terrible.
resolve the sound issues. It was next to impossible to hear people.
My sense is that if, by meaning inside, he's thinking either the middle school auditorium or the
Okay.
high school auditorium.
Yeah, because the cafeteria was, I understand that they had to do it that way, but it was really, really bad, and he is absolutely right. My thinking is if it looks, I don't know, considering the people who attend town meeting, especially in years where there isn't anything that seems to be particularly hot buttony, right? Like, I don't know how they'd feel about rain and, cold. But when we did the rain date, did we pick a time or we just picked the day?
Pick the day.
Because if he could do the afternoon, right? I mean, I don't know that there's any, or do we just do June but have it outside? I don't know. If people are concerned about having it inside, but unless it's like in a cafeteria setting, right, in order to establish the space, I think Anita's right, it was awful. It was far more pleasant to be outside at KP
Absolutely.
than it was to be inside. The ideal certainly would be to get back to the point where we can be in an auditorium like the middle school without it being. But I know that's a whole lot of not answering your question. I also know that we're hopefully gonna, maybe hopefully tomorrow the model changes and we can just have it on Saturday, and I'm mindful of Jay's schedule. I'm not really worried about anybody else's schedule. It's hard enough without adding in other people. If he could do the afternoon of the 15th, that would be great as a rain date if it can be done outside. If the school could do it outside, I don't know, I mean, I'm
The
assuming.
school could do the 15th, they couldn't do the 22nd, and then the last weekend of May is Memorial Day, which is just not a good plan.
Right.
So, his email at 6:11 tonight was, I'm seeing a 30% chance of rain in the forecast, what's everyone's thoughts? If we move it, I have no Saturdays available, I would be comfortable with an indoor meeting in mid-June. And he answered another person's email to say, it would not be the auditorium. It would likely be no, it would not be the field house, it would be an auditorium. It could be either one, I think. I don't know what we haven't asked is what's the school's availability in dates in June. We didn't go out that far, because we thought we would do one of these two.
So he's no longer available even in the afternoon on the 15th?
I don't know.
Flat out said no Saturday availability. So from my perspective, I've been, pre-worrying about the weather since it started popping up on the extended forecast, right? I've been
Sure.
looking at it every day and watching how much it fluctuated and changed. It's gone all over the place, right? It's been ridiculous. There's been 65% chance of rain. There's been 0% chance of rain. It's changed a couple of times today. Right now, it's saying that during the day that there's a slight chance of a rain shower, but mainly it's just overcast, which I would feel okay executing the meeting as scheduled if that were the case. I would just probably like to get into, a 3-day range, look what tomorrow looks like in terms of the forecast, and maybe kind of set up a decision point by the end of day tomorrow.
I think we have to, because we need to let people know.
Yeah.
Right. I'm with Jay on that one, and I saw him on the thing. I don't think we decide it right now, but I was just figuring we're here, we could decide what we do in the event that it's
Doesn't
pretty
look good.
consistently, clearly doesn't look good.
Yeah.
But I'm fine making that decision game day tomorrow as well, but I agree with Jay that you can't leave it to the absolute last possible minute.
What are the implications of us moving town meeting into June? Do we have to?
We did it last year.
Yeah, last year, we just need to find a date the school is available, and if he's busy on Saturdays, I think we're looking at an evening indoors, some night that we think works. 7 o'clock kind of thing. There's nothing that we've got to go get done that can't wait another couple of weeks. It just has to be done by, as you know, by the end of June, that's all.
Well, yeah, right by the end of June. And I get it, right? I understand that you clear your original date with the moderator and you cleared the rain date, but the moderator can't, he's unfortunately, our moderator happens to also be employed in the business of town governance as an attorney, so he needs to be at other people's town meetings that are happening at the same time, which is only unfortunate from the standpoint that you can't ask the guy to give up
Yeah.
earning a living by holding out the rain date, but that does land us in a pickle because
Rentham
it's
uses,
because he gave up his rain date that we're now trying to figure out what to do.
I mean, if it's in June, I don't recall the dates of Rentham's and Plainville's.
Well, there's that problem too.
So Rentham has theirs in the high school auditorium, Plainville, not exactly sure.
Didn't decide it yet, I don't think. I
But
think
they
there was
usually have theirs the very beginning of June.
Mhm.
So maybe if we go, I don't know, do any of you have any scheduled conflicts in June that weeks you're away, we need to stay away from? Or is June generally okay with you?
I'm going to a wedding in Iowa on June 17th.
Where in Iowa? I'll talk to you after that.
Dryersville, Iowa. My nephew's getting married.
Sean's family are from Iowa.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
that's
I'm a Hawkeye.
That's a Thursday.
No kidding.
I am.
They're from Centerville.
Very cool.
Yeah, maybe like the second week in June, like the week of June 7th or something. Might,
I'm gonna get in trouble for saying it in a public forum, but we're going away 1 week in June. I don't know what it is.
Oh,
Well, we could probably figure.
It's one of them.
I guess I'm away, actually, as a quick aside, I'm away Memorial Day weekend. But that has nothing to do with this, but I know, like, in terms of if anything on Memorial Day weekend, I'm gonna need somebody to fill in. I guess I would just, perhaps we hope for the best in terms of the weather and maybe find out if his statement, I have no Saturdays, meant none at all, or if the afternoon is still available, because while I appreciate that someone might want to go to town meeting, the people that we have to be mindful of their schedule is the school and the
Yes.
moderator.
Yeah.
And that's it. So if he could do it on the afternoon of the 15th in the event, which was the day that we selected a while ago, such that I understand why he can't do it. If other people can't do it that day, you know.
And I think really right now, it's soon enough that my druthers would be to do it outside.
Well, that's my other thing, right? Like, I understand that there's other people who, again, sort of pivot when it, well, now it's fine to be inside, but inside in an auditorium is somewhat,
you may
Snug.
have some people who are still not comfortable going.
right.
So that's just,
And we have the
That's
opportunity, it's in
understandable.
the spring, it's spring, summer, like, it's a different thing if it's in November. I don't know, my sense is if we could figure out a way to, to do it the afternoon of the 15th, hope for no rain,
Hope for this Saturday.
but if not, then yeah.
I'm just sending him an email about that.
Forecast for the 15th is
They don't have
That's
any
too-
idea.
33% chance of rain during the day, 24% chance of rain at
Like,
night.
That's
I'm
not
sure-
better.
That's however many away, though.
Let's try to have it. If we can have it, let's try to have it.
Right.
But I agree with you on waiting another 24 hours. We'll know a lot more than we know
Exactly.
right now.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. But on that also, I just wanted to, I left at your seats the planned transfers. That's one of the things we do kind of at the last minute. They fall into a couple of categories, using some free cash, ambulance receipts, and some monies from Conservation Revolving Fund. The expenses are, we had an additional student at Norfolk Aggie that we didn't know about when we set the budget prior. They got added. Snow and ice worked out to 101,000 above budget this year. Land use salaries, we needed to take the monies from the filing fees for wetlands to make up the difference that the general fund doesn't make up, so that's why there's a even amount is a put and a take. With COVID, we had allowed, for fire department salaries, we had allowed staff to carry overtime, so we had time vacation over from one year to the next more than typical, and to cover storms, overtime for people being out during COVID and such, so that was an expense this year. We've had continued legal expenses which need to be addressed. The big one on here is landfill leachate removal. I don't want to bore you too much with the details, but the landfill built in 1992 has leachate that comes out, goes into a tank, and has to be trucked out, and disposed of properly. For some reason, we have an incredibly large amount of leachate this year, and our budget is usually about 35,000, and we need an additional 66. The engineers have been working on why and what's causing it, and unfortunately, we don't have an answer yet, but we've got to cover the cost of removal of the material while we figure out a plan to go what is going on and how do we stop it or fix it. So that's going on. And then, as we do every year, we need to move money from ambulance receipts for appropriation to pay for the debt on the ambulances because we borrow the money to pay for them. And then cover the cost of the billing services is also coming out of that fund. So if you true up the last three items on the list, they add up to the 108,000 coming from that appropriation account. All the revenue that comes in from the runs that we do pays for the debt on the ambulance and the cost of the billing. And we pay 4% of everything we collect goes to the billing company who chases down helping us get paid. So I just want to tell you about those, and advisory will take them up before town meeting to review them as well. And then if we do meet on Saturday, don't forget we've got the 9 a.m. meeting in the conference room in the high school. You come in the front door, immediately turn left to get into the superintendent's suite. Also, we had, at the moderator's meeting, he had suggested that maybe the board wanted to give the town a quick update on the fire station project. I don't know if you wanted to do that or not. I'm just bringing it up because he suggested it, that the project's, kind of, the committee's been formed, it's out of the gate, or we don't want to make a report at all. So I'll leave it with you whether we do or we don't. I just wanted to let you know came up as an idea.
I don't know if we have enough yet to provide
right?
people an update. I mean,
That's
it's
fine.
good that we got the ball rolling, but I don't know if we necessarily want to get in front of a microphone and identify. We formed a committee.
They've
They
met,
put out some RFPs.
They've met maybe twice.
No
right,
problem. I
right,
just wanted to
exactly.
let you know it was
I don't
asked.
know what they said, somebody quit.
But on that, on that note, we do have a tour for Owner's Project Manager candidates tomorrow. I think over 50 firms have pulled off the document and reviewed it. So we'll see how many come in the rain tomorrow. I hope we have enough parking, but we'll figure that out. So that's exciting. And then two other things. Memorial Day Parade. We got an email just this week concerned by a Boy Scout group that they'd like to see a parade. So wanted to see if the board wanted to chat about that at all tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it came from the Cub Scout pack leader, and he made a good point in that, the new guidance that came out from the state highlighted specifically that as of the 29th, you will be allowed to execute a parade at 50% capacity and with an approval of a plan from the Board of Health. So I just figured we could take that up into consideration and identify if we want to change course at all in terms of what we have planned. We did get direction and insight from the KP band that they did not feel that it was appropriate to attend, whether it be for whatever reason. The Girl Scouts also declined to come, even in the smaller format that we were executing. But I don't know if this new guidance changes the perspective for any of those groups or not. I didn't get the indication that was what they were getting at, but I guess this is the first level to say, do we want to explore this further? Do we want to talk to Chuck about what's going to be required to ensure that we're keeping a 50% capacity along a parade route? Do we want to talk to the Board of Health about what they would need to see in terms of a plan in order to be able to approve something like that to be done in short order? Or do we feel like the current path that we're on is the safe way to go? We executed it well last year, and we really look forward to returning back to normal next Memorial Day.
That's where I'm at. I feel like who's gonna come to the parade is the kids, and the kids aren't vaccinated, right? None of those kids are vaccinated, and I just would rather not encourage them to gather until we have this under control. And so the small thing is respectful and does the job, but, none of the under 16s aren't vaccinated.
Susie, thoughts?
So, I agree, it's not necessarily from a vaccination standpoint that I'm coming at, it's not saying that doesn't have value. For me, the issues are that certainly, that when we made the initial determination, it was in part because of input that we had received from the public safety people, the chiefs of both the fire and the police, who I would defer to more than the Board of Health, just given the curriculum vitae of all, right? And if they're not comfortable, and then I remember Anita opining about the issue with people who sing or play an instrument, and that you couldn't have a band. So now you don't have a band, which is kind of in my mind the only reason to go to a parade is for the band, but that's just me. So you've got no band because they're concerned about safety and public and distancing, and certainly the fact that the governor widening or opening things up a little bit more wasn't a surprise. It hadn't happened yet, but it wasn't like he just like woke up and was like, surprise, like now you can do this thing. And to and as what you were saying in terms of, well, if you even want to entertain it, now how do we effectuate it? We won't have a band. There's going to be people, educators, whose job it is to educate, which I think includes get them to adulthood alive, who are concerned about the health aspects of it. It's going to be a very quiet parade because there's not going to be a band. Fire and the police chief, at least, I imagine, knew that it could open, but I suppose you could ask them again, but we're concerned. And so how do you, I don't know, it just seems like, I get it, like people wanted it to happen. It just, as unfortunate as it is, I know because other people were like, why aren't we having Harumph Memorial Day Parade? Because the fire chief and the police chief, who I defer to on issues of public safety, said they didn't think it was a good idea. Kind of think that's it. I don't think I get to say, perhaps I do, I know I do, but I don't think I should say, you're wrong, because this other person wants to do it. Like, it just, I don't know, it's hard, but I'm with Anita. I think at best you could open it up or, reach out to the chiefs and public and the Board of Health and say, all right, if all of these things, can you pull it off? What's that look like? Are you going to have to add police on to make sure that we're counting the number of people and look at, I know how many people actually show up even if there isn't a pandemic. I don't necessarily think that the numbers are going to be like our issue, especially if there's no band. But, is it an added expense in order to, walk up and down Main Street? I don't know.
For the sake of asking the question, I'd like to know the input based on the new guidance. Cece's probably right. They probably known that this is going to be a possibility for being lifted ahead of the holiday, long before they did a press conference. However, just for the sake of being able to identify where the concerns lies, I think it would be good to know that. The answer might be nothing changes. We knew this was coming, and we still stand by the fact that it just wouldn't be feasible for us to be able to execute something like this safely. Great. We have our answer. Even with new guidance, that's what we're going to fall back on. That being said, I would like to find some way to incorporate the Cub Scouts into the smaller scale event, whether it be that they come up and do the Pledge of Allegiance, or they do something where we can include them in the ceremony.
Well, I know that there was an interest, he was looking for someone to do the Gettysburg Address, so maybe the Cub Scouts could do that.
I should know how old Cub Scouts are, right?
They can have index cards. They don't have to memorize, you know, like the older kids would have that Gettysburg Address memorized, but
What do they go
Cub
up to, like
Scouts
9?
are the little guys.
They go up to 9 years old, right? And then
Yeah,
they go
no,
to
they're
Boy
gonna,
Scouts?
yeah,
Yeah,
they're,
okay.
these are the guys that, they can
They can read.
read.
I was
mean,
just
I
imagining
wouldn't,
my 6-year-old doing it. I'm like, oh my God.
I wouldn't put it on them to memorize it, but they could certainly read. I mean, and that, you know, I think that that's maybe
Goes
a
to show
good
what I know.
compromise, is to figure out ways of incorporating, especially in light of the opening up of incorporating people who do want to be involved
Yep.
without running up against the concerns that Anita's outlined or whatever.
I can have Nancy reach out to everyone
There's
and
a
say,
sidewalk,
hey,
they can
and get-
walk up and down Main Street, sidewalk to with impunity on their way to recite it, and we just won't have the drums. The drums are
in
the
the,
best part.
I can have Nancy reach out and say, in light of the, you know, the governor's changes, you know, would you want to reconsider it and let us know as quickly as possible?
Let us know before Friday so that we could talk about it pre-town meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good.
And the Cub Scouts, I love having them at the smaller ceremony. I think that would be great.
Yeah.
Socially distanced.
Exactly.
And then just lastly, just excited about the state awarding ourselves, Rentham and Franklin, the public health grant. It was supposed to start Saturday. We found out on Friday, so we're not out of the gate, but we're excited to be able to significantly make a change in public health with some real resources to move forward. So happy about that.
Excellent. And kudos to you
Fantastic.
and everybody who worked on that.
Absolutely. Any questions for Blight's town administrator updates? Cece? Rita? No? None from my end? Judith, anything from your end? I feel bad. I haven't called on anybody in this meeting all night.
No, nothing from my end.
Got some feedback. That was good. The next item on the agenda this evening is to approve some warrants. So I would move that the board approve 3 warrants for the period of April 20th through the 27th, 2021, as printed on the agenda for this meeting. Here a second.
Second.
Hearing a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
And I move that the board approve the minutes of the March 30th, April 6th, and April 20th, 21 regular meetings.
Here a second.
Second.
Second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I do believe that takes us to the end of our agenda for tonight. Blythe, anything else from your perspective?
Nope.
So we assume if the town meeting's going forward on Saturday, we have our meeting on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
If not, we do not, correct?
Correct.
And may I just say congratulations on being reelected to the Norfolk Select Board. And I think the town of Norfolk is lucky to have you here.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm eager to find out who the opponents I ran up against in the write-in slot are, so I look forward to hearing about that. If it was Daffy Duck, I'm going to be very disappointed. I don't know if you saw either, but I did also raise that my kids were petitioning that we put in Dino the guinea pig, and that they'd kind of catch some momentum, so I'd be worried.
Dino live at your house?
He does. Yeah.
Ah,
I love guinea pigs. They're awesome.
I had a guinea pig when I was little. Cha-Cha, her name was.
All right, if we don't have anything else, Cece, anything else from your end?
Nope.
Anita?
No.
All right, with that, I would move that the board adjourn this meeting of the Norfolk Select Board.
Second.
Second, hearing a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you so much, have a wonderful evening.